3 dangerous men disappeared from a maximum security prison, leaving behind no trace, no tunnels, no overpowered guards, just gone. For 6 months, they carefully plotted their escape from one of the most secure facilities in the country. The mastermind behind it all was an Iranian-American psychopath so dangerous and manipulative that he could make anyone do his bidding. But what no one could predict was how far he would go and how close he would come to freedom. The escape plan was bold and almost unbelievable. It relied on bed sheets, hacksaws, and a single cell phone to pull off the impossible. But what happened when greed, betrayal, and a split-second decision turned a carefully orchestrated escape into a deadly game of survival? This is a story full of shocking twists and unexpected turns, so stay tuned until the very end, because you won't believe what happens next. Orange County Men's Jail, 2016, not the kind of place where anyone expects to disappear. It's a fortress 5 stories tall, designed to hold the worst of the worst. Inside, over 60 inmates are crammed together in massive dormitory-style cells, always under the watchful eyes of guards patrolling the catwalks. No privacy, nowhere to hide, and for most people here, no way out. But for Jose Neri, this wasn't just another stop before a life sentence, it was an opportunity. One last shot at freedom. Neri's story starts long before his time inside Orange County Jail. Born to Persian immigrants, he grew up in Fresno, charismatic, intelligent, but always wanting to bend the rules. He wasn't the kind of person who accepted authority easily. After a brief stint in the Marines that ended in a dishonorable discharge, his life spiraled out of control. By 2012, Neri's crimes were as shocking as they were brutal. He was accused of kidnapping a marijuana dispensary owner, torturing him in the desert, and mutilating him in ways most people couldn't even imagine. It was a crime that left no doubt if convicted, he'd never see the outside again. But Neri wasn't about to go down without a fight. He fled the country, vanishing into Iran, where authorities couldn't touch him. He stayed hidden for 2 years, but eventually, law enforcement lured him back using his ex-wife as bait. Neri was caught, brought back to face trial, and thrown into the maximum security Orange County Men's Jail. For most, that would have been the end of the line, but for Neri, this was just the beginning of his next plan. He knew his best shot wasn't a trial, but escaping before he ever got there. The jail was designed to hold people like him, violent offenders who had nothing to lose. It was a fortress, yes, but every fortress has a weakness. From the moment he was placed in Module F, Neri's mind went to work. He started looking for a way out. Inside the jail, Neri was just another face among dozens of inmates packed together in a dormitory-style holding cell. It was hard to imagine anyone escaping from a place like this where every move was visible and every sound echoed through the halls. But Neri saw something no one else did behind one of the bunks. There was a ventilation grate. For most people, it was nothing special. For Neri, it was a potential escape route. The grate wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a challenge. It was sealed, and even if he could break through, the vent might lead nowhere. But Neri was willing to take that risk. He just needed a way to cut through it. Neri wasn't going to do this alone. He was smart enough to know he needed help, and he found it in 2 other inmates: Bac Dong, a seasoned gang member with a reputation as a fixer, and Jonathan Tu, a younger man caught up in a Vietnamese gang. Together, the 3 of them formed a plan. Neri convinced Bac to use his street connections to get a hacksaw smuggled into the jail. It wasn't going to be easy, but Bac had a network outside people who could get things done. And so, piece by piece, their escape plan began to take shape. Even though in a place like Orange County Jail, trust was a dangerous thing, Bac managed to pull it off. The hacksaw was smuggled in, hidden from the eyes of the guards. For the first time, Neri's plan wasn't just an idea, it was real. But now they had to move fast. After the guards had done their rounds each night, Bac and Jonathan went to work. For weeks, they sawed through the bed frame, blocking the vent. They had to work in complete silence, hiding their tools and their progress from both the guards and the other inmates. One wrong move, one sound too loud, and it would all be over. The tension inside the jail was rising. Neri's trial was getting closer, and the window for their escape was shrinking. After 16 long days, they finally broke through the bed frame, gaining direct access to the vent. But the hardest part was still ahead. The vent system was a maze dark, narrow passages that wound through the jail's infrastructure. They had no idea where it would lead, or if it would even lead them to freedom. But they didn't have a choice. With the bed frame out of the way, they spent another 8 days cutting through the grate itself. Each night was a test of nerves as the guards patrolled the halls, completely unaware that an escape plan was unfolding right under their noses. Finally, the grate came loose. They were in. But crawling through the vent was only the first step. Now, they had to figure out how to navigate the labyrinth of air ducts, pipes, and shafts that ran through the jail. They had no maps, no way of knowing which direction would lead them out. They had to explore blindly, feeling their way through the dark, hoping they wouldn't end up trapped deeper inside the walls. Neri knew time wasn't on his side. With his trial inching closer every day, any slip-up could mean the end of the line. But inside the maze of pipes and ventilation ducts, he had a bigger problem. There was no way to navigate these narrow, dark spaces without some kind of light. Without it, the 3 men were just rats in a maze. They needed a tool. And not just any tool. They needed a cell phone. In the world outside, a cell phone might seem trivial, but inside Orange County Jail, it was everything: a flashlight, a way to communicate, and even a means to film their escape. Neri knew what needed to happen next. They had to get their hands on a phone. And for that, he once again turned to Bak Dong, the fixer. If Bak could get them a hacksaw, surely he could smuggle in a phone too. But this time, it wasn't just about getting the right tool, it was about using it wisely. Despite the layers of security, smuggling contraband wasn't an uncommon occurrence, and if anyone could pull it off, it was Bak. He had the right connections, the kind that could get you anything for the right price. And just like before, he delivered. When the phone was in their hands, the first thing they did was turn on the flashlight. The darkness that had been suffocating them was now pierced by the soft glow of the phone screen. Suddenly, the maze didn't seem so impossible. They could see where the ducks led, what obstacles stood in their way, and most importantly, how to navigate around them. But for Neri, having the phone wasn't just about finding their way out. He was a narcissist, and the idea of filming their escape was too tempting to resist. To him, this wasn't just a prison break, it was a spectacle. As they crawled through the narrow passages, they started recording, documenting every step. They thought they were invincible, confident that their daring escape would become a story for the ages. But the reality was far from that. The ventilation system was literally a maze of twisting pipes and narrow shafts. One wrong turn, and they could end up in another part of the jail, or worse, right back where they started. They moved carefully, one step at a time, navigating sharp corners and steep drops with precision. Night after night, they would sneak into the vents, exploring deeper into the jail's inner workings. The air was heavy, the space claustrophobic, and the constant fear of getting caught gnawed at them. But they had no choice, the only way out was through. And then, after weeks of inching their way through the system, they found it the path to freedom. But there was a problem. The exit they had found wasn't at ground level, it was 12 feet above them, and it was covered by wrought iron bars. They had come so far, and now this, sawing through the bars, could take months, and they didn't have that kind of time. If they spent too long on this part of the plan, they risked everything. Because Neri's trial was looming and the clock was ticking. He knew they couldn't afford to waste any more time. They had to make a decision: was this the right exit, or was there another way out? One wrong choice could mean disaster. But hesitation was just as deadly. So they needed to act and act fast. But in order to know for certain, they needed more information. A map wouldn't cut it. The only way to get the details they needed was from someone inside the jail who had seen the layout firsthand. Someone who had been inside for long enough to know how the system worked, what was behind the walls, and where the true vulnerabilities were. That person was about to walk right into their plan. The tension continues to build, with dangerous alliances forming and trust being tested. The escape is perilous, and every move could be their last. The narrative suspense makes you eager to know what happens next. Keep going. Every available officer was mobilized. 250 deputies were assigned to the jailbreak task force. The media was alerted, and soon news of the dangerous trio on the loose spread across the country. A massive manhunt was underway, and the entire nation was watching. But while law enforcement scrambled, the escapees holed up in a seedy motel in San Goz, trying to lay low. Instead, they found themselves caught up in the media frenzy, their faces plastered across every news outlet. They watched themselves on TV and reveled in the chaos they had unleashed. However, the euphoria didn't last. The longer they stayed put, the more Neri realized how dangerous their situation had become. They needed to move fast. The problem, they were running out of cash and options. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and Bak Dong, ever the resourceful fixer, turned to Craigslist. Dong found a white van listed for sale. They arranged to meet the owner for a test drive, and true to their criminal instincts, they never returned it. Now they had a new vehicle, but Neri had one last loose end to tie up: Long Ma. He had been a witness to everything, and Neri knew witnesses were a liability. His decision was cold and calculated. Long Ma had to die. Bak Dong, however, wasn't ready to take it that far. Over the course of their time together, he had developed a bond with Ma, who reminded him of an old uncle. Killing him was a line Dong wasn't willing to cross. Tensions between Dong and Neri boiled over, and the two men came to blows. Neri had the upper hand in every way: stronger, younger, and more fit, but what Dong lacked in strength, he made up for in determination. In the end, Neri relented. Dong may have lost the fight physically, but he won the moral battle. Long Massachusetts' life was spared, at least for now. The next morning, Neri and Chu left the motel to get the windows on the van tinted. Dong seized the moment. He approached Ma and told him, "Uncle, we need to leave. They want to kill you. We need to go now." Dong and Ma fled. They managed to escape and made their way back to Orange County. But Dong wasn't escaping anymore. He was done. He made the decision to turn himself in. When Neri and Chu returned to the motel and found Dong and Ma gone, they knew their time was running out. With no plan, no money, and no allies left, they packed up their belongings and hit the road once more, driving west. But now the game had changed. Low on resources and running out of places to hide, the two men found themselves not just fugitives from the law, but prisoners in their own escape plan. Meanwhile, law enforcement was still scrambling, chasing leads that led nowhere. Hossein Neri, Jonathan too, and Bakdong had vanished into the night. Despite the media attention, the nationwide manhunt, and hundreds of officers on high alert, they seemed to have disappeared without a trace. But every escape has a weakness, and this one was no different. Out of nowhere, the break law enforcement had been praying for came from the most unlikely source, a tip. Bakdong and the kidnapped cab driver Long Ma had returned to Orange County in plain sight. When they stopped at a local hardware store, Dong made a move no one could have predicted. He walked in and calmly told the employees, "Call the police." It was a bold move. Dong and Ma weren't just turning themselves in, they had come up with a plan to try and claim the reward money offered for information on the escape. Dong, always the hustler, was now the first person in history to attempt to collect a reward for turning himself in. But more than that, Dong had given up everything: the location of the van, the whereabouts of Neri and Tu. For Neri and Tu, the writing was on the wall. The moment Bak escaped with Ma, they knew it was only a matter of time before their entire operation would unravel. However, in that stolen white van somewhere in the Park District of San Francisco, they could feel the walls closing in. Neri may have been brilliant, but even he couldn't outrun fate forever. Their luck ran out in the most unexpected way. A homeless man happened to recognize the van parked near a Whole Foods market. He had seen the news, seen their faces, and more importantly, he had seen that van. It was a moment of recognition that would bring Neri's escape to a crushing end. Within minutes, officers swarmed the van. Jonathan too, defeated and cornered, surrendered without a fight. But not Neri. For one last time, he ran. He wasn't going to escape to Iran. He wasn't going to escape his past. He wasn't even going to escape a parking lot. He sprinted away with desperation, but his freedom lasted only seconds. Police tackled him to the ground, and in that moment, it was over. His grand plan had collapsed, and now all that remained was the inevitable return to his cell. Neri, Tu, and Dong were taken back into custody, their brief taste of freedom extinguished as quickly as it had started. But the consequences of their escape echoed far beyond their capture. The Orange County Jail was now under intense scrutiny. The then sheriff came under fire, accused of allowing outdated procedures to leave the jail vulnerable. The public demanded answers. How had this happened? Changes came swiftly. Motion detection cameras were installed in the utility corridors where Neri and his crew had made their move. Radio-tracked prisoner badges became the new norm, ensuring that every inmate's location was accounted for. The jail even brought in cell phone sniffing dogs to prevent the kind of communication that had allowed Neri's crew to organize their escape. As for the escapees, the fallout was severe. Bak Dong was sentenced to 20 years in prison for his role in the jailbreak. Jonathan too, the younger accomplice, now awaited his own fate in court. But for Hossein Neri, the mastermind behind it all, the trial would be little more than a formality. He had already been convicted for his brutal crimes and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. This was the end of the line for Neri. No more schemes, no more escapes.